Hello, welcome to Have Roots Will Travel. My name is Lisa Elvin Stoltari, and I am a genealogist and a passionate traveler. Over the last year, we have been exploring Les Filles du Roi, the King's Daughters. What started off as a really small project has bloomed into a project that we will now be attempting to do all 700 of Les Filles du Roi. We are now on episode 130, so we've come a long way, but we have a long way to go. For those of you interested in previous episodes, please have a look at haverootswilltravel.com, my website. I have posted the links to all of those that have come before. And also, I'm on Facebook. I have a page on Facebook. Check that out for upcoming episodes. I also want to make sure that you subscribe and click on the notifications alert so you are alerted every time I post new content. And also like this channel so that, all that is helpful to me and to the growth of the channel. So with that being said, let's get to know episode number 130 and who she is. Her name is really interesting. Lucrece Billot. Billot. I think that's how you say it. Lucrece Billot. And viewer request, I do not have her in my files at all. So let's get to know Lucrece. Lucrece was born in 1647 in a commune called Orbey-l'Abbé. Remember that commune means township. Now, Orbey-l'Abbé, which is now part of the Grand Est region, where you can see on the upper left, and her commune is found in the Marne region, département or county. There are currently only 550 people living there, so it's a very, very small place. However, it's a very, very historic one. And so the St. Pierre St. Paul Church was built of the 12th century and early 13th century. It is obviously been redone many times over. And Orbey-l'Abbé is part of the Champagne wine region as well. We do have the Abbey at Orbey was founded at the end of the 7th century, and the remains, including a church, are situated in the center of the town. And the church that you see on the bottom was built. That would have been where she would have been baptized. And then this little street here that I put, I just liked it when I saw it. And that's the City Hall. Just amazing. And right by the church as well. You can see the church in the background. So this is where Lucrece is coming to us from. After her father's death, Lucrece came to New France as a fille du roi with a dowry worth about 200 pounds. She arrived on September 25th, 1667, aboard the Saint Louis de Dieppe for Quebec, and she was about 20 years old. Let's see what happens to her. There's a little twist here. September 11th, 1668, counting back up, she would give birth to a natural child, which meant a child born out of wedlock. Counting backwards, she would have become pregnant in early January of 1668. Nicolas Grandet is the father, but for reasons we do not know, they were not married, and perhaps he was already married, but I couldn't find any evidence of him except in the naming of his child. This child would pass away 3 months later in December of 1668. Lucrece would have been alone in a new country, a fille du roi without a partner. And she would have lost her child. There is no evidence that she had a relationship with Nicolas. So this is a bit of a detour. So she arrives in 1667. By January, she's with someone, at least one night. And then she, obviously gives birth by herself or with a midwife. And by December, this child is no more. So we start the year 1669. What is to become of Lucrece? Well, there's a man named Jean Seguin, who was born in 1646, who would ultimately become her husband. He was born in a place called La Ferté-Massy, which is a commune, which is found in the Normandy region of France, and inside that region, aka the county of Orne. The fortress of Metzieux is what that name means. Metzieux was also called Massy, And ferté meant, in a very old French and Latin, solidness, as in fortress. So it was Matthew's fortress. That's what La Ferté-Macé means. This fellow was actually a companion of William the Conqueror at Hastings in 1060. He was one of the first lords of La Ferté-Macé. The Château de La Ferté-Macé was built in the first half of the 11th century. In the 15th century, the castle was destroyed. La Ferté-Macé then survived until the 18th century as a small town of about 1,000 inhabitants, living off crafts and local trade. This craft, already in the form of home weaving, was a precursor to the next century when the city would become a major textile area. So I really wanted you to see how the spelling of La Ferté and all that. And this is the town and the church where he presumably would have been baptized. Very historic. Very, very, very historic town, as many towns, little towns are in France. So this is our guy. It appears that Jean was already in New France when Lucrece was, going through all her trouble. So he was in the 1666. He's living with Maître Roy. And he's listed as a domestique, but he's listed as a shoemaker, which is actually one of his trades back in France. And then he's listed again living with Maître Roy. He's now that's in the 1667 census. So he's there. He's waiting. So let's see. So basically 2 years almost not to the day, but a little over 2 years since she actually landed in New France, Lucrece would finally settle down with someone. And it's their marriage certificate, their marriage record, I should say. They were married in Quebec City. He would settle at Charlesbourg, which is a borough of Quebec City now, but at the time it was a strong and independent place. The origins of Charlesbourg began with the concession of the Seigneurie of Notre-Dame-des-Anges, the Notre Dame of the Angels, in 1626. The seigneurie extended very far and was actually the Jesuits who were given it. By 1665, the new intent, and they didn't do anything with it, so there was no inhabitants, they were just kind of hanging out there. In 1665, the new intendant of justice, Jean Talon, set out to establish 3 new villages further north on the plateau. That caused, obviously, friction with the Jesuits, who were the seigneurs of the area. The first of these villages consisted of a 25 arpents square, so that's about 20 acres, but in a square format. So I want to show you how it's laid out. You can see the little, on the upper left, you can see Charlesbourg and how it is, there's a square in the middle, and then it's kind of like a star-shaped, if you will. Jean Talon wanted the church to become the primary kind of focus, and because all other areas were laid out by the river. This was a new and kind of unique way. And we have the Bourg Royal that was also, and to a lesser extent, the Petite Auvergne that was settled that way as well. And this is an aerial shot taken in the 1960s, and you can clearly see that it's, essentially follows that model. I wanted to show you where Charlesbourg was on the map in terms of Quebec. It's just up, it's very close. It looks further on the map. And this is the church that existed eventually, did not exist when our people were there. And then, but in 1696, this is an illustration that I found and love to share. So it kind of gives you an idea of what it might have looked like. And this, in the middle, is the 1681 census of Jean Séguin, Lucrece Billot, sa femme, enfant, and this tells you they have Jean, who's 6 years old, Lucrece, who's 4, Pierre, who's 1. They have 1 cow, and we have 8 arpents à valeur. So it's about 6 or 7 acres of land. They would go on to have 5 children together. Their firstborn, Robert, married Claudine Chrétien and had 6 children, all of whom made it to adulthood. Interestingly, Claudine's mother was Marie Meunier, another fille du roi, who we'll be doing in a future video. Jeanne died sometime before the 1681 census. Jacques married Marguerite Dubois and had 1 child, who made it to adulthood. Jean married Anne-Marie Dubout and had 4 children, all of whom made it to adulthood. Marie-Madeleine, I don't have any information on. I'm assuming she died young. So Lucrece would die on November 22nd, 1706, at the age of 59, fairly young, even for that time period. But they would have celebrated 37 years of marriage, so they at least had a good long life together. Jean would die remarkably 20 years later at the age of 80. December 22nd, 1726, just remarkable. And this is the cemetery that they would be buried at Charlesbourg. Now, even though their name is spelled differently, I'm fairly confident that the Association des Cégains d'Amérique is part of the legacy of his family. So I would encourage you to verify and if this is your descendancy, all the ins and outs and all the information that they would have, because it basically encompasses all. The spelling is not that important. What is important is the name. So Séguin is Séguin, whether there's an extra O or that sort of thing. So have a look at that, and I've included the web address as well for you. Further information for you all. And number 1, La Société des Filles du Roi Legacy, or a lineage society that I belong to, and I'm the membership chair. I would encourage you to check that out. Great website, even if you're not a member. We have the Quebec Genealogical E-Society. It's also a paying society, but obviously has lots and lots of resources for you as well. And then we have Nos Origines, which is a free website. We have Généalogie Québec, which is a paying website, but for me, it's well worth it. And then Migration is a free website, which I donate to just to help them out. But everything you ever wanted to know about Les Filles du Roi is on that website, I swear. I mean, not everything, but they have so much. They have so much. You got to check it out. And then we have a wonderful Facebook group, very kind and loving, very generous of soul. That's how I view it. Filles du Roi Descendants on Facebook. Check that out. And with that, we end our episode 130. Lucrece was an interesting one because, obviously with the birth of a natural child, not getting married right away, kind of flouting convention, if you will, doing her own thing, and then finally finding love and long-lasting, long-lasting relationship with Jean Séguin, I think was a testimony to her perseverance. And despite the fact they didn't have that many children, in 1729, in that famous study, they actually had 46 descendants, which I find really amazing. So it's not where you start, it's where you finish. And obviously my viewer, hundreds of years later, is testimony to the fact that that line lives on. So Lucrece's memory and her contribution and her sacrifices are still present. And certainly for the town of Charlesbourg, they were early pioneers, and certainly that would be an area for you to research if this is your descendancy. So we thank Lucrece. She had her trials and her tribulations, but she kept going, and that is sometimes the most important thing of all. So with that, we bless her memory, and we thank her for her contribution. Until I see you on episode 131, au revoir.